Gigabyte G5. I've owned this laptop now for a week, purchased it for $1,800 Australian, and over that past week I've put it through its paces, benchmarking games, battery, and a few other different tests on it as well. The specs and the price of the machine, I'd essentially put this as an entry-level RTX 3060 machine, but I'll go through the specs now. It's got a 15.6 inch 240Hz display, an RTX 3060 6GB and 80W edition, an i5 10500H, 16GB of DDR4, a 512GB NVMe drive, and a 180W charger. To begin with, let's talk about the display in this budget beast. It is only a 1920 by 1080 resolution at 240Hz. I'm not too sure what the response time is, but the viewing angles of it are pretty good. The panel brightness is 300 nits. I find most of the time when I'm using it at night, I'm usually dropping it a few levels lower than maximum brightness, as maximum brightness tends to be a bit too bright, I find. During the day, viewing angles and the brightness of it are perfectly acceptable, especially when using indoors. As grainy as the camera is on the Gigabyte G5, the overall picture quality I don't mind too much. It's actually rather detailed compared to other laptops I have tested. The keyboard is similar to ones I've experienced in the past with Clevo laptops. The key travel I find a little bit too far for my liking, and the keys themselves do have a little bit of a wobbly, mushy feel to them. The backlight of the keys I find to be pretty decent, with a large variety of colours and also various brightness levels. The trackpad was also equally familiar to me, which the feel of it's perfectly fine, just feels like plastic. The left and right keys, I do like them separated into their own clicky buttons, but overall perfectly usable, but currently I've been using a Bluetooth mouse. If you have a look at the edging, you can see that it has a kind of textured carbon fiber look to it. On the left hand side we have the one vent, a USB 3.2, a USB 2, and 2 audio jacks. And going on the right hand side of the machine, we have another USB 3.2, a DisplayPort Mini 1.4, and an SD card slot. Also one other vent. And looking at it across the rear, we have one vent, USB Type-C 3.2, HDMI, Ethernet, we have the power jack, and then one vent that's blocked off. Let's have a quick look underneath, and as we can see we have a very small removable battery. This one is a 48.96 watt hour battery, so fairly small, about the size of a mobile phone. Next up is the power brick itself, which has a fairly familiar barrel style, which is similar to an older Toshiba or Asus laptop. It's a 180 watt charger, which is also fairly small in physical size. It's one thing that I've definitely been liking about newer laptops is the size of their power bricks have gotten progressively smaller compared to over a decade ago. While on the topic of power, let's see what kind of wattage this 3060 actually is. So with Jared's Tech, he had a good little guide on how to actually figure out what wattage it is. And it seems to normalize at around about 80 watts with this particular laptop. So I'm pretty confident to say that this 3060 in here is an 80 watt variant, which still is fairly capable from what I've found. About the only form of software I came across on here installed was this Gaming Center, which gives you power modes, macro hotkeys, which is something personally I've got no need for, but I could definitely see some people using this for various games or even media creation. There was also the LED backlight software, which enables you just to change various colors, brightness, a few other different little things. But if you're like me, you're going to be looking at this screen probably the most, which The GPU tends to be quite more cooler than the CPU. The CPU tends to hang anywhere from 50 degrees up to 80 degrees. The fan speed can get quite fast, up to about 4700 RPM. You can adjust the power curves, but strangely you can't adjust the lowest point. So you can't adjust the starting point of it or the ending point, which is a bit disappointing. On the topic of disappointing, this apparent Gigabyte WindForce exclusive cooling system, to me, doesn't seem to be as legit as they're stating. Especially once the bottom is removed, the cooling here doesn't look anything special at all to me. Granted, it does have slightly larger, apparently 5-volt fans, which, according to my knowledge, virtually all laptop fans are already 5-volt. So a bit of marketing fluff on the Gigabyte website. But up on the upgrade front, we have a spare NVMe slot, so there's 2 in total. We also have 2 RAM DIMM slots, and there is also off to the side a 2.5-inch SATA hard drive tray. So to summarise my time with the Gigabyte G5, I found that it had an extremely poor battery life, extremely good power, decent screen, low quality speakers, as it's the same kind of design that I've seen in older Metabox Clevo laptops. So they're downwards facing at the front, and overall I usually just gave up and just pretty much used Bluetooth headphones while using this machine. The trackpad's fine, the keyboard a little bit spongy, but overall it's fine. Wi-Fi speed I found to be perfectly good. I got a Google Wi-Fi at home. It was coming back on speed test at 100 meg, perfectly fine. The I/O I find pretty modern, pretty adequate. Personally, I'd rather a micro SD card reader as opposed to a SD card. That can be changed with an adapter. Cooling on it's a bit on the lower tier, so that is a tad disappointing. Mainly because you're also going to be experiencing a fair bit of fan noise. If you're occupying a room or sharing a room with someone else while using this, the other person's probably going to be fairly annoyed with you if you're going to be gaming the whole time. Another shortcoming that I did find with it during my use of it was this edge right across here. Right there, there's a nice little plastic lip that tends to dig directly into your wrist as you're using it. So I found that even after 20 minutes of gameplay, my wrist started to get a bit sore, or even my forearm, just from resting up against this lip. You can get around that by having it on a stand. If you're on a stand, it's going to be perfectly fine. It's going to be nice and smooth, a smooth angle to your hand. But if you're after a portable powerhouse to use around from your house to a friend's place, and you're not factoring in school or uni, this very well may be a very decent gaming machine, especially if you're upgrading from a 1050 Ti or a GTX 1650. This is going to absolutely decimate them. So, being of the budget end, you can forgive its flaws, but overall, a decent machine. I'll catch you guys later. Bye.